All right, I overplayed my hand on that one.
Yeah.
Welcome to, I believe this is episode 3
Yes.
of the Bit Obscene podcast. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the habits of highly successful query tuners, not low level query tuners, not amateur query tuners, but highly successful query tuners. So I hope everyone's buckled up for this ride. Joe, who is just fresh back from the golf course, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone out there in our massive audience?
Hi, my name is Joe. I wanted to
Joe,
match
what?
Eric's pea green background color, and I looked through my wardrobe, but I am not a fancy worldly man like Eric, so my wardrobe is kind of limited. So this is the best match that I have.
Oh.
I hope the audience can forgive me.
The Everlast still hasn't sent you a tank top, huh?
No,
No.
they don't respond to my emails at all.
No, that's shocking. Shocking.
I think we need to get more viewers.
Yeah, I don't know. Either that or tell them that you punched a hole in the boxing bag and really blow their minds.
And speaking of that point,
Yeah.
last time Eric was like, I want to get to our bread and butter. I want to talk about query tuning
Yeah.
because people think they want to hear about query tuning.
They think they do.
They think they do.
I think. Well, I mean, they might want to hear about it, but really, I think they just want someone to do it for them, which is usually my experience with clients.
So speaking of that topic,
Yeah.
The very first thing I have to say about,
here we go,
claiming to be a highly successful query tuner myself. Yeah. Let's
you
share.
You are one of the most highly successful. Well, I mean, depending on how you determine success, is like you determine success by like big houses and cars and jewelry. You are not highly successful. What if you
gold watches?
Yeah, maybe
gold
that.
Watches?
Yeah, maybe that.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe just one. But if you determine highly successful query tuner by being able to successfully tune queries, Joe, you are a rich man. You are an incredibly wealthy man. You would not pass through the eye of a needle on a camel or whatever.
So basically, the way that no one else would define success in society.
Well, I mean, there are different metrics for everybody, right?
Okay, am I sharing anything?
No, you have nothing on the screen.
This is always
not that anyone listening to this radio show would be able to see what you're sharing on your screen.
Yeah.
We should just stream these live.
This is really important too. Okay.
It seems important.
Is it working now?
Yep, that's working. Yep.
So what do you think of this classic artwork? It should basically be in a museum, right?
It really should. That belongs in, if not a museum, then at least a blog post.
So the important lesson here, or if you allow me to interpret this artwork, to offer one interpretation.
Please, you did go to college.
There's always someone better than you, which is also true when it comes to query tuning.
Yeah.
And the gentleman from New Zealand who is dunking on Eric and myself is, better than us, I would say.
Yeah.
So keeping with that sports analogy.
Oh boy.
I've heard. Hey, you've
heard of sports?
Yeah, I've heard of sports. There are a lot of database people who do things like run marathons for some reason. I don't really get it myself.
Or at least 5Ks. I don't. Yeah. Bought a 5K finisher T-shirts when you go to conferences.
Okay, it's been a while for me. It's been said that like some of the very best basketball players, you think, okay, they have played their seasons, they retire, maybe they could be like a really good coach for their players. Mm-hmm. But that isn't always true. And my understanding is like some of them are just so talented and they're so good at what they can do that it's difficult for them to explain it to other people. Like it just comes naturally to them. And I don't know if I'd go as far as to say that Eric is the Michael Jordan of query tuning, but
no, definitely not.
I do think that even if someone is good at query tuning, if they share their own process, it might not be a good fit for you. So for example, if you're able to hunt down the person in that basketball artwork and offer him a very large sum of money and say, I would like you to teach me the exact process you use for query tuning. He could try to teach you,
Mm-hmm.
but would you actually end up doing it his way yourself? Probably not.
Well,
So
you
I
might.
would
I
say,
think you might try to imitate it, but
yeah,
the thing with that, and I will let you continue, but this is a salient point. The thing with that is that the process is only as successful as the knowledge that backs it. So like, you like he might go like he might have a very good process that works for him and the set of knowledge that he has and the wisdom that he has acquired over his, I think, 5,000 years on Earth. But like unless you have that, aiding aiding your execution of his process, you might be in real trouble trying to recreate it. Like someone said, like, look at the query plan, and like, what do you look at in a query plan? Well, it might not be what he looks at in a query plan. Like there's a whole lot of there's like years of like mastery that goes into something like this.
I remember one drawing a query plan on a whiteboard just from memory
Mm-hmm.
in a room full of Microsoft people, and they all acted like I was some like crazy person or like genius, depending on which one you looked at. But for me, it was just another Thursday.
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
totally.
I think it's important to be humble, though, as someone who thinks his thoughts are important enough to record and broadcast. Maybe
Sure.
it's not credible coming from me. I think it's important to be humble, and it's important to keep learning and to be selective in how you're learning, and to be mindful of what you just said, which is it's good to learn from other people, but even if they do their absolute best in teaching you, if you're going to training or reading a blog post or whatever, there might be more to it. Or
Mm-hmm.
one person's process might not be a good fit for you.
Yeah,
Because it's kind of like once you've done this for too long, you're kind of like you're so far removed from like what the true, you know, experience is for someone who's just starting out
yeah,
or if someone
definitely,
only has a year of experience.
definitely.
And as we all know, many people are hesitant to ask questions in
Sure.
training
Yeah.
and presentations, especially Europeans, I hear. Not
Yeah.
that, no.
Well, no.
Um,
Europeans like to save up all their venom and then approach you after you're done speaking and let you know everything they disagree with vehemently, venomously
so
and
I think it
vehemently.
was it was back in 2017. I went to training. There weren't any Europeans, fortunately,
No,
and
just
I had the
six tacos.
privilege of attending a SQL Saturday pre-con by a great and knowledgeable presenter. It's
Mm,
it's a not you, by the way. It was Adam Mechanic. This was before he like disappeared from the internet or
yeah.
whatever and ended
Yeah.
up in the Postgres jail,
Yeah.
which I think is where he still is,
Yeah.
right? Um,
Postgres correctional facility.
and I viewed it as not like so his the content was great, don't get me wrong,
Hmm.
but my goal was to ask as many questions as I could without getting thrown out.
Yeah.
And I think I walked that line pretty finely. But like I was the only one doing that, and it was a room
Yeah.
of like 40 people. And
Yeah.
it's like like here's someone who can probably answer any question you have. Like I think people should be more willing to ask questions, especially when
Yeah.
they're paying money or at the very least time to learn from an expert.
Right.
And I guess I'm just speaking generally, but especially when it comes to query tuning, just because there's so many questions you can have, unique scenarios, that you're aware of in your own problems or
Yeah.
whatever. Like I think that people should swallow their pride or whatever the problem is, and
Well, I think part of that
be
part of
willing
the
to ask questions.
yeah, but like part of the hesitancy is, like specifically with something you brought up, where like you have a very unique scenario and you want to like figure out an answer to it or get someone's opinion on it, and like it might it might not be easy for you to convey that scenario just with language, right? It might not be able for you to like set up a good word problem to hand that person to do that, and you might not be able to do it fast enough where you're able to pass that question on, get an answer, and then or maybe get an answer without taking a lot of time away from what everyone else is learning who might not have that specific scenario. If in cases like that, like I always tell people, like, you shut up to my pre-con, and like if you have a problem that is too hard for me to like answer directly, well, you're just telling me about it here, like email me, like I'll get the right level of detail for like like tables, indexes, query plans, query, all that stuff, and like I'll do my best to answer you offline. Like there's I don't think there's any shame in that. I did a pre-con, I guess 2 weeks ago now, just about 2 weeks ago, down in Nashville for a conference called DataTune, and there were a lot of questions. There were so many questions that we actually went a little bit over time, because like the way that I pace things, I don't anticipate a lot of hands going up, because not a lot of people are like that eager to like like put themselves on the spot and ask something, either for fear of seeming stupid or like I don't know, whatever it is. But like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm just such an intimidating presence in the room that they cower before me. But uh, yeah, it was like there were so many questions that like the end of it, I was just like, I gotta hurry up. Like, we're gonna go over here. So that was nice. But in general, I think you're right. There's not enough questions, and usually like the the if you're like on a stage with a microphone, it's really hard to get questions in that situation, unless you have someone like with a microphone, like walking around the room so that other people can get on the boom box and make themselves known.
You walked in as the presenter. I
Yeah.
think everyone else in the room thought this person is either here to teach us query tuning or they're here to rival us. And they weren't sure which until you started talking.
I'm only here to steal your heart.
And your money.
Nah. Oh, not money. Give your money willingly. The heart yearns to be captured. At least that's what I saw in an anime.
So I spent a lot of time talking about how other people's processes might not be good for you.
Yep.
But I want to share my own process because I think my process is the best and
Yep.
everyone can use it.
Yes.
Blah, blah, blah. Is there anything you want to add on this topic before I get into that?
I think the lesson I've learned the hard way a lot, quite often, and I think it's a problem that is prominent and consistent, especially with database people, is that they are overly dogmatic about things. Like, they'll see like a cursor and just be like cursors, or they'll see a heap and be like heaps, and like it's like there are a lot of paradigms like that where like they'll just see something in a query and be like, oh, like idiot, how could you do that? The problem staring you right in the face, when like that's not the issue. Like there are like 5 other things going wrong, but the thing that you're focusing on is just like the thing that you've been trained to bark at. And so like not being overly dogmatic is a good one, and like be like less dogmatic and more analytical. Like someone might be bringing you a query with a legitimate problem that has nothing to do with what like whatever bell you think is wrong, whatever dog whistle you think is blown for you. So that's what I would that'd be my contribution before you read us your haiku.
I think that's a really good point, and I'm going to build on what you just said with a few examples.
That's amazing, because I didn't know what you were going to say.
It's true. Eric comes in this totally unprepared. I like scribble some things down like right before, and that's the entirety of our preparation.
I did come prepared. I come mentally prepared. I'm like Jay-Z. I don't write things down.
Okay. I don't know if our audience is going to get that reference, but
they might not.
So for me, query tuning is often a 3-step process. First step is identify why the query is slow, why performance is bad.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very specific, like detail-oriented kind of question, like which operator is slow in the plan, if it's that kind of issue. So that's the first thing, identify why it's slow. Second thing is, as much as I can, whether that's limited by time or knowledge or willingness, try to figure out why did SQL Server do something that ended up being slow? Because it's supposed to make good decisions, right? The query optimizer is supposed to choose fast, efficient plans, which we don't have to worry about. Why am I paying all this money when SQL Server is making decisions
This autonomous
that
self-tuning
that
database.
cause problems for me?
Yeah.
SQL Server should be serving me. I shouldn't be serving SQL Server. Okay. And then the third thing is, how can the performance problem be solved in a way that I never have to worry about this procedure or code or
Mm-hmm.
query again? Because, you know, like for me, I hate to see a procedure and then tune it, and a couple of months later it's the same procedure,
Comes
tune it
back to you.
again, and so on. Now, for consultants, maybe it's totally different. Maybe you've got your like money making procedures
It
that you tune over and over, and
depends on how you make your money consulting. For me, that wouldn't be a moneymaker for me.
Okay, all right, well, there you have it. But yeah, like, for me it's those three steps.
Yeah.
Identify why the query is slow, try to figure out why SQL Server is doing something slow,
Mm-hmm.
and then try to find a fix which solves the problem forever, and I never have to worry about that procedure. And
It's good. I like it.
thank you. I don't know why I started doing this because it's not like something it's not like something that you like decide like beforehand. Oh, I'm gonna do this, right? It's just something that kind of
Yeah.
naturally happens over time. So now I'm gonna get into details. So speaking of being dogmatic, I don't know if I should say this, but I
Oh, that
mean,
means you should say it.
yeah, I mean,
Say it
like the whole
loud.
like the whole reason we have this is to finally let all those things out,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Kind of feel like the general like base SQL Server query tuning like knowledge level is apparently stuck at a SQL Server 2008 R2 level, which we all know was like the very best release of all time.
Clearly.
But like,
It was my favorite because it didn't have availability groups. As soon as those
um,
came along, everything went south.
the reason I say that is, like, admittedly, I was still in college when it was released, but it feels like there was a lot of content created.
Mm-hmm.
There's some good features added. People wrote
Mm-hmm.
books. The MCM program was winding down,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know. Like, it feels like there's been like a lot of copying and pasting. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like we haven't really like at a base level evolved from that era.
Mm-hmm.
And as Microsoft added features to make things easier, like some people would talk about them, but like in a lot of cases people aren't even aware.
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
and like and I think to give what I think is the most important improvement Microsoft has done, that would be the operator level statistics, where you get an
Mm-hmm.
actual plan
Yep.
that shows you at the operator level IO, CPU
Mm-hmm.
time, elapsed time.
Yep.
Like you can actually look, figure out, okay, like this query was slow for the specific reason. Like
Mm-hmm.
for example, the query took 15 seconds, 14 seconds were spent building this index spool.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, to make the query faster, you need to get rid of this index spool. Like that,
Yep.
like that's there. Like
Yep.
like SQL Server tells you why it's slow. It's telling you. It
So
wants you to know
it wants
why
you
the
to
query
know.
is slow.
But
It wants you to
I
know.
actually have a good question about that for you, because it's even one that at times I struggle with, because you might find, okay, let's just like put some numbers on it. Let's just say you have a query that runs for 5 seconds, right? But then you look at the query plan and there are like 500 operators in it, right? It's a big query plan, and no specific operator is doing anything slowly. The query plan is just the sum of its parts, right? Like there's like, maybe 100 milliseconds, 200 milliseconds, like, 50 milliseconds, and they all add up to 5 seconds, but no particular like thing. There's not like a big like usually with the query plan, like you're talking about, where it's slow. You like look at the query plan and it'll be like, you see like the end time all the way over here, and like assuming it's row mode and everything's cumulative, you see like the end time over here, and you sort of like follow the query tree until there's like 15 seconds, and then like 0 seconds after it, and you follow that 15-second down, and like you find like the part in the branch was like, oh, like there's like two things that take 7 seconds, right? So like you can figure those 2 7-second things out. But when you have a bunch of stuff that, is individually very fast, but cumulatively it adds up to very slow, what's your approach there?
So that's always a tough one. I think my first,
Sure is.
I think the first step would be, because you said like 500 operators, right?
Well, I mean,
So like,
I was just trying to. I said 5 seconds, so I
yeah,
was like, but
oh,
you can make it like 100
you but
operators.
yeah, all right, 100 operators. I would start with why is equipment I have 100 operators.
Yeah,
Um, if you're lucky, it'll be a case where like it's a query that can be simplified by like moving repeated subqueries into apply,
yeah,
and then you can just get rid of them. You can reduce the number of
yeah,
operators, or maybe there's a logical temp table you can add or something. I mean that would
yeah,
be my first step.
yeah,
But like when it's a very complex plan and it seems like there's no clear operator that makes it slow, I mean it's basically the most difficult case, other
yeah.
than just not having the
Yeah,
code
no,
machine do
it's hard as hell. Like you look at it, and it's like there's not like a common table expression that got re-referenced, and there's not like any obvious thing that you could like quickly like add an index or tweak to make better. Like it's one of those things where you just like you sit there and you stare at, it and you're like, crap. like you thinking like even if I like split this thing up and broke it into temp tables, like sure I might end up with like like individually faster queries, but like it still might add up to that 5 seconds by the time you get done like temp tabling and then like doing the final result from the temp tables.
well, I mean, this is a total cop out, but sometimes queries are slow because they're actually doing the work that needs to be done and it's line
Yeah,
of work.
yeah,
Like
totally.
like I, like I've definitely had procedures where I wanted to speed them up and it like wasn't a 100 operator plan. It
Yeah.
was only a few joins, but the nature of the work was just not great from a relational database performance point of view.
Hmm.
It's like okay, well like this is gonna take 2 seconds. That's just how it
Yeah.
is. And in that case, it was fine. If you're in a case where SQL Server is doing a good job with the query plan, there aren't any obvious things to make better. It feels like the CPU time it's using is well
Hmm.
spent. Then you're really getting into a net. You're getting into it's a problem that's hard to solve, right?
Yeah.
Like you get okay, I need better hardware. I need to rethink doing this in SQL Server.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
like
like if it's
things
a
like
parallel
that.
plan, you can like maybe try a higher DOP to see if like recruiting more CPUs is beneficial. But like if it's a single threaded plan, it's just like you look at the weight stats. Like that's actually another good thing that I think Microsoft added to query plans was query level weight stats. And like you look at the query level weight stats, and it's like 3 milliseconds of SOS scheduler yield. You're like, this thing wasn't even like getting beaten up by any other queries. This is just like on its own, like almost in a vacuum. Like it was doing all the work that you asked it to do as well as you asked it as well as it can. Like that kind of performance problem is like wild to me because I'm like, like where do you go from there?
I would put weight stats in the query plan as probably well, I don't know about second. I mean, if I had to pick the top tier, I would say query store in general,
Yep,
the actual operator statistics,
yep,
and weight stats in the actual plans. Like those
yep,
three things can get you so
yeah.
much.
They're
And
game changers, absolute game
right,
changers.
but like, and like people admittedly do talk about query store. I don't know if they say useful things, but like, I mean, like thinking back to my old Stack Exchange days, like. Like I mean, like even there, people aren't often talking about hyper level statistics
No,
or weight stats.
nope.
It's just the usual 2008 R2
Yep,
baseline of
yep.
stuff. Um, but going back to you leading off with the most difficult example. Thanks for that, by the way.
Yeah, right into the meat.
I mean, like I have a much narrower worldview than you. The performance problems I see at the query level, it's almost never what you're describing.
No,
There's
but
usually some obvious thing.
oh yeah, same.
And
But
okay,
like
it's the
that's the
same for
one that
you.
stick. Yeah, that's the one that sticks out to me as being like the most challenging one to solve because not only are you looking at this query plan, but you're looking at this query plan like on a call with a client who's just like expecting you to do something magical to fix it, and you're staring at it and you're like, I think I can do something with this. Just give me a few minutes to think about it. Like
All
crap.
right. Well, I don't have your problems,
Yeah, under
but
the gun a little bit.
I can. So it's when you bring in the guy who's wearing a suit and tie, right?
Yeah, definitely. Bring in some Oracle
Definitely.
consultants.
That's right. Um. So going back to step one of my process, like why is query slow? Um, so to give some examples of like what I feel acceptable answers are,
Yeah.
I looked at the query weight stats
Yeah.
and there's a ton of SOS schedule field. Or I looked at the query weight stats and there's some CPU throttling because it's in some dinky Azure SQL VM.
Oh yeah,
Or
the throttle weights. I love seeing those.
it's waiting for a memory
Mm-hmm.
grant. Or there's a big TempDB spill and it's like level 100 and it adds lap time. Or it's or there's an index spool, or there's a nested loop join, and on the inner side, it's scanning a table a million
Yep.
times.
Oh, that scan under a top is probably one of the things I look for the most too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So for me, like, and you can also split queries into is it spending too much CPU time or is it
Mm-hmm.
spending too little?
Mm-hmm.
Too much being it's doing a lot of work but it's inefficient. Too little being the elapsed time is much greater than CPU time because it's waiting on something, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
I/O
Yep.
or cloud throttling
Yep.
or
Locks.
TempDB or whatever. Or lag. So I'm looking whenever possible to get that level of specificity for
Mm-hmm.
okay, the query is slow. Why is it slow? Like, what is it
Yep.
doing that makes it slow?
Yep.
So I try to make that my first step. Um, so in the second step, which admittedly is a luxury of someone who isn't on a call with someone, with people who are like waiting for the instant answer,
Has a gun to their
is
head.
why did SQL Server pick that plan?
Yep.
And sometimes you just can't get that answer,
No.
or it's impractical.
No, I
So
mean,
like
yeah.
it's an optional thing,
yeah,
but I think it's helpful when you can do it.
Yeah, totally. Like that's where I think things like query and index hints can be really useful if you have the time to spare to like use those, because you might like look at a query plan and be like, okay, like like I think this is a dumb choice. Let's see what happens if we do my choice instead. Like sometimes you might be right, sometimes you might be wrong, but like I think it is useful when you can to experiment with query hints and index hints and stuff like that as much as possible, just to figure out like from like a query tuning point of view, like am I on the right track in thinking that this is just the wrong plan for the query, or is this like the best possible plan for the query given what we have to work with?
That's something that I'll do sometimes too. It is a great way to try to narrow down the answer to question too.
Yeah.
I had one the other day, which was I had a cluster index scan, the inner side of nested loop. There
Yep.
was an index that would have worked,
Yep.
but optimizer wasn't picking it.
Yep.
So I forced it to pick it, and I saw the cost was a little bit higher.
Yep.
So like this is because like if you're not getting the query plan you want, it's either the cost is too high or it just wasn't considered.
Yeah, or yeah, like it wasn't considered either because like the optimizer ruled it out early on, or the optimizer costed it out, or the optimizer never got to an exploration point where it found that plan.
So in the case I had, the index which would have worked
Yep.
had a lot of included columns.
Yep.
And I guess it had so many that, due to how it was costed,
Mm-hmm.
the optimizer thought, oh, well, I might as well just do the scan because this index is so wide.
Right.
And, there's like a million other
a non-clustered index that competed for space with the clustered index. That's special.
Well, and I mean, it was.
Have you tried defragmenting that
I
index?
feel like it was one of those areas where the optimizer was wrong, and the optimizer could have been more sophisticated in making that decision.
Yeah.
Anyway, I ended up creating a similar index but with fewer included columns, and it went for that.
Okay, that's a really interesting demo, I think.
And this is definitely isn't a common thing I do. In fact, I hate creating indexes that have the same key columns.
Sure, yeah,
because
yeah.
Some very generous people who make tools for the community, their tools will throw a little warning like, "Hey, dummy, you've got some indexes probably don't need."
Did you ever consider that the index you created was so superior that you could have dropped the other index with all the includes?
I didn't want to think about that.
not a
and
habit of a highly successful performance
to
tuner.
be fair, the actual table itself was what was on the small side. The problem was number of executions.
Yeah,
So, like if it was a big table and the index was taking a lot of space, they might have gone for that.
sure.
But, like in this case, it's like, well, whatever,
Yeah,
it's this tiny table.
live and let
We'll have
live,
two indexes. We have more important things to do,
or live and let
right?
index, I guess.
And I actually did a poor job reading my notes here. So to give an example of the first step, figuring out why the query is
Yeah,
slow. I remember a question asked on Stack Exchange. Someone was like, "Hey, I had this query. It took 10 seconds. That's slow." They were nice enough to provide an actual plan. And some well-meaning answer said, "Oh, I see you have 4 XML path in your select, and that's slow. You shouldn't do that. Use string ag or something."
yep.
And I looked at the actual plan library statistics,
Mm-hmm.
and the 4 XML part took like 10 milliseconds
Yeah,
out of the 10
yep.
seconds. Now, like if you're in like the 2008 R2 era where there were no operator statistics, like, maybe doing that kind of like analysis about like I'm just gonna read the select query and then, dogmatically,
Yep.
think about, oh, like what things in the query are bad, like, oh, it's query that's bad. From an XML path that's bad. And then, just rewrite the query until it gets faster. But SQL Server wants you to know why the query is slow.
It's true.
It wants you to know.
It's true. You have the tools in front of you.
And, if you let it whisper into your ear and you listen to it, then you would know that, okay, I can just ignore this 4XML path bar completely because it's only 10 milliseconds.
Yep. Yeah, well, I mean, the stuff that I usually like, not to get too off track, but like, especially like subqueries in a select list like that, it's like SQL Server does I think a pretty decent job of like doing all like as much joining and filtering as possible to get to the number of rows that you actually need to do anything with in those subqueries. That usually those aren't the big problem unless like something in that subquery like it doesn't have a good supporting index. You talked about ends up with an eager index spool or something. Like there are definitely situations where like they can be a problem, but usually like by the time you get down to like your select top 10 query, you have 10 rows that go out and do that subquery stuff. They're usually not going to be the problem. Usually the problem is getting to the point where you do the subqueries in the select list.
I will agree with that. It may have been less true, 16 years ago.
Maybe,
so,
yeah.
it's still going to be in everyone's mind because
Yeah.
Microsoft does these things and
Yep.
community ignores them.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a funny thing because like especially like old forum posts, like someone would post a query. Actually, it still happens. Like, it's still, like I'm still on Stack Exchange. I think even today there was a question where someone was just like, "This query is very slow," and all they do is post the query, and they're like, "Any pointers?" And you're like, "No." Like sure, there's like there might be like stuff in there that you like could like nitpick and be like, well, I wouldn't do this way, I wouldn't do this way, but I don't necessarily know that that's what's making the query slow. Like you could see a perfectly written query and be like, crap, that thing takes 20 seconds, really? And then like you get the query plan and you realize that like either like there are just no indexes to help that query, or it's on like an Azure SQL DB like P-3 instance with like half a hyper thread and like 256 megs of RAM, and you're like, well, okay, there's obviously some other reasons behind that. But like, I find the like just diagnosing what's wrong with the query based on the query text is quite often misleading. I don't think that's the best way to get the answer most of the time. Like there are some things in queries that are good to note in the way that they're written, that like you should keep in mind for later when you're looking at the query plan. But I mean, if you're not looking at the query plan for something like the actual execution plan, there's a very, very small chance that you're going to be able to solve the problem like realistically, or like
I wouldn't go quite that far because companies want to have an actual plan and they just won't give it to you.
Yeah.
And it makes things.
Well, then it's just best effort, right?
Yeah, but I mean, like I wouldn't go as far as to say that you won't be able to And I'm sure the way you said it, you don't really mean it because
No, I don't mean
like
I don't mean you would
like
never be able to solve it. I just mean that like,
yeah,
it just makes the task much harder, and it's a
yes,
lot more expended effort and a lot more like, oh well, try this. No, that didn't work. Okay, well, try this. Like, it's
yeah, and
just a lot harder. But that's for a long time. That's like all people had to deal with. So people probably like mentally made a checklist of things that seemed to help in the past, and now, like when they just see the query text, they're like, oh well, try these three things. Maybe change the query this way, and that'll do it. But like I said, like, it's like an overly dogmatic way of doing things.
if you're on SQL Server 2017 or higher, you can, as you know,
Yeah,
you can get wait stats in the query store.
yeah,
I mean, they're organized poorly, but even
yeah,
that alone, even if you don't have an actual plan,
yeah.
like, like there's just so many more hints and breadcrumbs and information
Hmm.
out there, even without an actual
Yeah,
plan, as long as you're on like well, I
yeah.
think 2016 is 2016 still
It's
supported
still
by
supported,
Microsoft?
but it's on
Probably
its
not
it's
for
on its
long.
way out.
Yeah.
Like if you're on an SP3, like it's not supported. Like SP3, I don't pay a lot of attention to
Yeah.
the expiration dates on things. Uh, but from my point of view, if you're still on SQL Server 2014 and you have like a business performance critical like server, like you're just screwing yourself. Even if it was a situation where like the vendor won't support like whatever compatibility level, blah blah blah. It like upgrade to a version that where you can get like reasonable feedback on like what's happening. Like give yourself as many tools and as much available as you can to figure out what the performance problem is. Like stay in compat level 20 whatever, I don't care. But that's like almost the least of my concerns. I've seen more problems from upping compat levels than from staying at a compat level. But like getting to a root cause of performance problems like has just slowly, I think, gotten easier and easier as Microsoft adds like insights and tooling and stuff to the product that allow you to do your job better.
Pretty soon, I suppose one of us could look this up if we really wanted to. Pretty soon, all the supported versions of SQL Server will have query store wait
Yep.
stats available
Yep.
in them. I mean,
Yeah.
it's something to think
Yeah, and
about. It's
like you said, like they're all going to have operator times in the actual plans. They're going to have wait stats in the actual plans. Who knows what else might get added to actual plans to make things like a little bit easier to figure out. Like for me, I really do wish query plans were more portable, so that like as a perform like when SQL Server introduced like DBCC clone database, right? And you could give someone a stats only copy of your database, and like they could like run queries against it. And like, granted, the IO stuff wouldn't be there, but like you could like at least see SQL Server's decision making process if you like change stuff. Like adding an index was stupid, but whatever. I wish that query plans were more portable in that like you could hand someone an executable query plan, and it would almost be executable for you, where you could like change things about the query and see what would have happened like in the context of like what's stored in the XML when it like with your changes in it. I wish that there were like better ways to like just make that sort of stuff available. Like I know it's a pipe dream. I know there's probably like 10 billion technical reasons why that's never going to happen, but I do wish that there was like a way to like sandbox a query plan so that you could like change things about the query and see what happens.
we got to get on the show. You can see.
As soon as Connor's restraining order is up, we'll get on.
Um,
Well, Joe Sacca's back at Microsoft, so maybe there's light at the end
wait,
of the tunnel.
really?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah, like a couple months ago.
Oh, man.
Yeah,
St. Joe is
St.
back
Joe
in
is back.
Microsoft.
Yeah,
It was a couple of years ago. I tried emailing him Microsoft
yep,
and it bounced back,
yeah,
and it's like the worst day of my life.
yeah.
I cried, and it's like,
Yeah.
man.
When he told me he was going to MongoDB, I was like, it's over. Like it's over. That's it.
So for the benefit of our audience, there are some. His title was a
Oh
program manager.
yeah, but yeah, I think so. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was like
So
program manager, but he
there
had like
there
10 billion people reporting to him.
there are some people. There's some people who are just like so helpful and
Yeah,
pleasant to work with.
yeah,
It's kind of hard to believe.
yeah,
And because like it's like when you're working with a vendor, they're often
Yep.
standoffish and not
Yep. Yeah.
transparent.
Yeah.
Like think about all the bad experiences you have with
Yeah.
vendors, right?
Yeah. Like
Never had
they're
bad
like the most
experience with Joe Sack.
not our
Yeah,
fault people on the planet. Like Joe Sack
yeah,
never had a bad
the real
conversation.
deal. Yes, exactly.
Never had a question. Like never sent him a question where it was just like that's not a good question, or like that's can't answer that, blah blah blah, or anything like that. He's always just like, if he doesn't know, he'll get you to the right person, or he'll ask the right person internally and like loop them in or something. Like fantastic. I wish he ran SQL Server. 'Cause,
Chef on the show.
I'll ask him.
All right, good.
I'll ask.
Um,
He's in London at SQL Bits right now, so I'm probably not going to ask today, but
yeah,
some
understood.
point in the future.
So going back
Can
to
the topic
step
of the
two,
show just be how great Joe Sack is?
I mean, I'd be fine with that. I mean, I feel like he'd be embarrassed, but I'd be fine with that.
I think he'd eat it up a little bit.
But going back to our current topic,
Yeah.
so step two, why did SQL Server pick the slow pen? It's supposed to not do that.
Yeah.
So to get some more real world examples, I mean, sometimes it had no choice. Like for example, queries waiting for memory grant for a long time.
Yeah.
It could be your queries asking too much memory. It could be there's too many other queries asking for too much memory. It could be, memory's too low. Like it may have just not had a better option.
Someone could have really messed up resource governor.
Yeah, or like there may be an assumption built in there which isn't being followed by your workload or your setup or your configuration. And to give another example on those lines, someone asked a question on Stack Exchange where their query took 30 seconds. They wanted help speeding it up, and I looked at the plan and it was spending like 30 seconds like with like throttling and IO waits, and it was all because of like it was like an 8 kilobyte spill to tempdb that like caused all of that. And I mean like you might look at tempdb and something, okay, well, spilling to tempdb is bad, I should rewrite my query to not do that. But in this case, like it was spilling so little data to tempdb, like trying to live in a world where like, you spill 8 kilobytes of data,
it takes 5 seconds,
30 seconds. It's just like no, there's no way. Like the problem is not the query, the problem is you're running SQL Server on that, what do you say, that S-3
something like that
resource. And I think it just had a happy ending, and he was able to convince someone to not run SQL Server on a toaster, and then his problem went away.
Yeah, no, but yeah,
like that's one of the things where I'm like understanding the why, and then in this case you're able to pick a fix which solves the problem. Right. Like if you just fix that query, then you're gonna have a million other queries which dare to spill a few pages to tempdb.
I think the important takeaway there is that sometimes it is not the query's fault that it is slow.
Yes. And like for some wait stats, I mean, it depends on the wait set and the scenario, of course. So what are some examples? I think like if you have a lot of tempdb waits, it could be your tempdb IO is too slow. It could be there's too many other processes all spilling. It could be your query needs to spill less. It could be you need more memory.
I mean, so like along those lines, I think one of my favorite ways to point out when I'm trying to help people solve solve a performance problem like at the workload level is like if every single query is running and waiting on page IO latch sh, or I guess ex to some extent if you're looking at modification queries, but let's just page IO latch sh is probably like the more common of them. Like you're like either your buffer pool, like your memory for the system is just like not up to what you're asking it to do, or like like granted, like sometimes indexing helps with that. Like queries have narrower indexes to read from. Not everything's a big clustered index scan, but like sometimes it's just, like those query level wait stats are not just valuable for tuning a single query, but they're helpful for indicating a problem with like an entire workload. Because like if like you pick out 3 problem queries, let's say they all take like 30 to 60 seconds. And you run them and just right before your eyes, they all take 30 to 60 seconds. You look at the wait stats and like 80, 90, 100% of that wait time is just reading pages from disk into memory. like, you like there are certain numbers that you have to get in order for like queries to be reliably fast. And that's to me something like looking at the page IO latch weights. That's a lot different from like when queries have like high parallelism weights or high SOS scheduler yield. That's just like your queries just have like this hard limit. They're never going to get faster than this until these other numbers get better. Either like you get rid of a lot of data, or you archive it off in some way, or these queries have better indexes so that they don't have to like scan your 8 gig clustered index. They can like read from like a few hundred meg non-clustered index. There's like a lot of different things that go into it, but the query level weight stats, I guess my point is they're not just valuable for a single query. They can be valuable like tuning a workload like in general.
Yeah, and I think this is making the same point you just made, but like if you see high CPU wait time in a query, well, that could be there's too much other stuff running.
Yep.
Or it could be your query's running a lot.
Yep.
And it's using too much CPU.
Yep.
Right? Like it really depends on where your problem is.
Yeah, no, but again, this is where the knowledge behind the process is so valuable.
Yeah, right. Yeah, like for all the things I'm saying, like step 1, identifying why it's slow. Step 2, figure out why SQL Server picked it. Step 3, pick a fix that's permanent. Like all those take a lot of, well, the more background knowledge you have, the better. Like the more reasons you know why a query could be slow, the better you are at reading execution plans, understanding weight stats. Like the more possible answers you have, I guess, the more likely you are to find a good enough answer to solve your problem.
Yeah,
and like there's a lot out there, to be sure.
Yeah,
which I think is part of why I open with saying, this is my process. I'm just some guy. Maybe you can't follow this yourself, but I think it's a really good place to get to eventually if you can.
Yeah,
I who doesn't want to solve a root cause?
Yeah, right. For me, like one very big difference that like I've sort of like noticed about myself recently is that like I can almost guess how like what's written in a query by looking at the query plan now. Like there are certain like things certain like patterns I see in a query plan. I can almost guess what someone did in the query, like spot on. And like I don't know, like 3-4 years ago, I probably couldn't have done that. But like there's just certain things that I see in a query, but I'm like, oh well, there's a join with an or clause in there, or like just stuff like that, where like someone did something absurd, and you see it in the query plan. You're like, there's like 2 or 3 reasons for this, and I can probably guess which one it is. So like that, like getting to that level is hard, but it's nice when you get there because it makes your process easier. No, definitely not. I wore an extra loose fitting Adidas T-shirt today, so that there would be no danger of bare chested.
Okay, all right, yeah, because you're talking about a pretty serious power up here.
I know. No, it was a cool thing to realize, and it was just like, oh, I can pick that out, and I was like, yeah, feel okay.
No, yeah, no, it's I think everyone watching, you should aspire to get to that point if you're not there.
Joe was there 10 years ago. That's why I aspired to get there.
Well, it wasn't that long. 10 years ago, I was a babe in the woods. I was a big fish in a small pond. So a few more examples of step 2, like a pretty common one is cardinality misestimates. SQL Server thought the estimate was one thing, it actually wasn't, so I picked a plan based on that. I don't want to talk about that because we're running out of time.
We're not running out of time. I don't have a hard stop to you.
Oh, you don't have a hard stop this time?
No hard stops.
Jeez.
Yeah.
All right, great. Sometimes, query plans are written in a way that a nested loop join is forced. Like if you don't have an equality operator in the join clause, you might be forced to nested loop join. There's no support index. You're kind of tying SQL Server's hands. It has to do loop join. There's no index. Either makes the spool or doesn't make the spool. Both are bad in their own ways. But like understanding all those possible reasons. Like, oh well, what are some others? Well, it was a query plan timeout. It just didn't consider my plan, or maybe it's slow because it takes a long time compiling. Man, I had a query that took like 8 seconds to compile and like 100 milliseconds to execute. So you're talking about your hard operator ones. I think I actually hate the 8-second compile ones more than the hard operator ones.
Yeah,
just
that's true.
Share my own pain points on that, man. I don't know if I mean, there are all kinds of
Yeah, but
examples
actually
why
that
SQL
brings up
Server
something
makes
good. Is
decisions we don't like.
sometimes like a query might be perceived as slow, and it's something external to the actual query execution that's making it slow. Like looking at compile time. Well, that's like fairly rarely been the root cause of like all of the slowness in a query. Like there's definitely been queries where I'm like, well, it takes 10 seconds to compile a plan, and then the query itself takes 10 seconds. Like neither scenario is good. But like if you're looking at a query and you're just like looking at the operator times, and you're like, the SQL Server is reporting 100 milliseconds, but when I hit F5, like it took 10 seconds. Like look at the compile time. Like looking at compile times, I think like a fairly valuable thing.
Actually, one of the more important ones, which is, I ran this server procedure in the client and it was slow, so therefore it must be a SQL Server problem,
Yeah.
right? Like if you go into step one, sometimes you can just prove, well, it's not a SQL Server
Yep.
problem. Like, oh, okay, well, the thing used a second of CPU time and spent 30 seconds waiting to send data to the client.
Yep.
This is not a SQL Server problem.
Yeah.
And like if you're not doing that kind of analysis, if you're doing I'm gonna look at the SQL text and like reorder things and change joins to applies and applies to subqueries and go back and forth and you add temp tables, add indexes, add recompile hint. Like none of that's going to work.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't change the fact that you're sending 5 million rows to like some application server that's like dusty old nonsense.
Or I mean, like there's all kinds of things application developers can do. Like I had an issue where recently where I thought in my opinion, in my humble opinion, the store procedure was not sending a lot of data.
Yeah.
But the developers said, oh, well, you're sending 10,000 rows. That's way too much data for the client to handle. And after some digging, they found they're doing some like super inefficient like time zone conversion in the client row by row. And that was like all the time. And they fixed that, and it was just so much faster. And it was like great guys. And
thanks for checking on that.
I'm glad we could solve this database problem together. But I mean, like that's a really important one. Like everything gets leaned on the database, and the database certainly has its sins and things it should apologize for. But,
well, it's easy to blame the big expensive thing in the corner that's supposed to be fast for why things are slow. Right?
It's true.
Like,
it's true.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's probably a good chunk of developers out there who point to the database before like looking at their own heat maps for figuring out why something was awful. But I think like blaming the database also isn't always unreasonable, because when you think about you think about a lot of shops, like they may not have anyone who can like be an expert witness for the database. Like a lot of like you might have like a big group of developers who all hit the database, but none of them like understand how to like analyze or like dig into the database to figure out if that actually is the problem. Like you might run into a lot of situations where developers think that they're doing everything right and their code is as precious as every Bloody Mary recipe in Brooklyn, but like in reality, like everyone's screwing up. The database isn't screwing up. The database is doing the best it can with what it has, but like, and sure, like the database might be slow, but the database might not be slow for a reason that like you can blame on the database. It's like something you're doing to it or with it, or like you have like 500 random application databases all on the same server, and everyone's hitting them all at the same time, and that's what's screwing you up. So there's just so much that goes into a performance investigation that like most people don't make it to. Like most people don't have that luxury, especially if you're answering questions online, Stack Exchange or whatever. Like you don't have the luxury of like going into someone's environment and like poking around and doing like a full good analysis. You can like look at the query text and you can look at the query plan that's presented to you, but like a lot of the times there's just more questions than answers in that.
There are some problems where you just have to get super deep. I think it's very rare, and it's definitely less frequent for me nowadays. So I remember once I had a problem where like an allocation order scan was too slow.
Yeah.
Like that was the problem.
Yeah.
Like how do you solve that, right? It was just this. Or I had a problem where this is even query tuning, but to build anticipation for future episodes. switching a partition took a minute of CPU time. And we had chosen partition switching because, as documentation said, it was a fast and instantaneous operation, but it was taking 60 seconds, and you just noticed.
Yeah.
But you know who helped with that?
Good old Dr. No.
Joe Savvy.
Oh,
Saint Joe helped
Saint
with
Joe.
that.
It's always Saint Joe, isn't it?
All
right.
Have
we talked about step 3 at all yet?
I'm
You're about to. All right, cool.
I'm about to,
I was gonna say we've spent a lot of time on 1 and 2.
Well, I mean, they're all important, and there's a lot to say about all of them. So just to remind everyone, because we're talking so much. Step 1, identify specifically why the query is slow. Step 2, try to figure out why did SQL Server pick the slow query plan. Step 3, how can you solve the problem permanently and completely so you never have to look at that ugly code again? And for me, that's a pretty big deal. I'm definitely not always successful. In fact, I'm often not successful.
Yeah.
But, it works out sometimes. So I think before that, there's a philosophical discussion to have, which is,
Oh boy.
well, I'm sure you face this problem many times where end user says, okay, this is too slow, and it's your job to make it faster. But the question is, how fast does it need to be?
Right.
Like answering that, because I think, I think there's some natural tension in some companies between developers and their managers, because some developers might have a passion for making things fast, but the managers view performance improvements as, okay, this is a money-losing thing. I'm spending developer time and testing time, and I'm introducing risk to make things faster, and we're not going to sell more licenses by making things faster, right? Like, if you take a very kind of brutal view of the world, you could say, the software should be only as fast such that people don't get angry enough to stop paying for it and switch to another.
Yeah, when you said you're not going to get new customers, I'm like, fine, but you might keep some.
Yeah, and it's like, to be fair, sometimes things are just unacceptably slow, and even the managers will let you make performance improvements. But like, it is true that like there's some companies that say silly things like performance is one of the hills we stand on. They try to market themselves as having fast software, which if you can do that, great. But I think in a lot of other cases, like people want or sales or whoever else, they want new features, that they want to be making more sales and trying to say, okay, well,
then you just stay competitive with other products out there, platforms out there.
Yeah, no, like it's. I'm not
ahead of other products or platforms.
What I'm trying to say is one answer to the age-old problem of how fast does it need to be. Like, I think part of the answer is, considering the economics of it. Like how fast does it need to be? And like there are some industries and spaces where people do just have to be brutally competitive with each other. Maybe there's a bunch of government stuff you have to do, or you're doing online gambling, or whatever the most competitive space is.
Stocks and stuff are probably
right. Though I think stocks is a case where people are willing to pay a ton of money to get fast performance.
Yeah. No, like they're not going to complain about like SQL Server licensing.
Yeah,
they're not going to be like, we need 50 more cores, no problem.
Like, right. And, like that's kind of the opposite of where I was going. But
I spent that money at a strip club last night. Like whatever.
You spent the money on a bottle of wine, right?
Yeah, bottle of Petrus from 1923 or something.
How much would that cost for those of us?
I have no idea. I don't even know if they had Petrus in 1923. I couldn't tell you.
You're ruining your reputation.
That's not my reputation. My reputation is like a good mix of quantity and quality. I don't want a $10,000 bottle of wine. I'm going to finish it in an hour.
As someone who's occasionally value alcohol, I try to pick something that's like in the middle, and that seems to go. Okay. You
chose Lagavulin, which is always the right choice.
Oh, see, there you go.
Never going to go wrong.
Getting back to what I was saying,
before we started talking about booze and strip clubs.
That's right.
About that.
I think that, well, what I would advocate for, kind of just like being a serve others is, like if you can, try to make things
Yeah,
fast. Like I don't think there are a lot of cases where a developer gets fired because, instead of making it take 5 seconds, they made it take 3 seconds,
yeah,
right? So like, and I've worked at previous jobs, I would often sneak in performance fixes that I wouldn't tell anyone about because it is hard to know what your developers are doing.
yeah,
Like there isn't anyone who's like who's gonna bust me for spending an hour on Friday making this code
yeah,
faster when technically we could have gotten away with making it a bit
yeah,
slower. And like of course there are trade-offs, right? Like you're gonna add an index, okay, that has its downsides. There's certainly a level where you can take performance tuning too far. Like, oh, I'm gonna add in-memory LTP to make this
yeah.
faster, which we're not using. I
Right.
mean, you probably shouldn't. That's not something you want to sneak in without telling anyone.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
That's for sure.
so like I think you need to kind of grade performance changes or performance improvements rather, where like there's like the heroic improvement, right? Where you go from something taking like just easy numbers, like it takes a minute and you get it to take 3 seconds, right? That's a heroic improvement. If you make an improvement where it takes 1 second instead of 3 seconds, most people aren't going to like necessarily feel that improvement, right? Like but by the time someone's using an application, they click on something, the request gets sent, the database does something, sends back data, like the application processes and shows it to someone, they might not notice 2 seconds, right? They might not like notice a 2 second tick with something. They'll notice like a 50 second or 55 second tick or something. But like there's like the heroic improvement, right? Which is like what I think most people like should like not stop at, but that should be where most people reassess what improvement they can make past that.
Yeah, I'm definitely not advocating against quick wins in all cases. I think that people are a bit too afraid of compiling.
Yep.
Maybe compiling was a big deal in
Yep.
2008, but like, and I'm sure you've seen this at least once, probably many times, where the query takes a minute, it only compiles 20 times a day. You had to recompile it, it now takes 3
Yeah.
seconds,
Yeah.
right? So you had to recompile, and maybe there's more you could do to make it faster. But I mean, like, is there anything better than making like a one-line code change, just add recompile and you're
No.
done, right? I mean,
No, like anything you do after that is more for you than for the query. That's it's like your own edification. This is like, I know I can get this from 5 seconds to 2 seconds. Urgh.
yeah, but like, I mean, I don't know. I have the sense that, maybe in the ancient times people were too liberal with the recompile hints and compiling, or maybe
Well,
the
you just
software
didn't
just
have the
wasn't
CPU that
good
you did.
enough. Yeah, sure. There's definitely the hardware wasn't
Yeah.
good.
Like 32-bit software with like two and a half cores or something. I'd be afraid of recompiling all the time too.
And Microsoft has made improvements to just cut down on the number of compiles in general.
Yeah.
Like in some scenarios for sure. Like, I mean, definitely pay attention to the number of executions per day, but like, if it's not executing that many times. I mean, a recompile hint's really not.
Yeah.
Like, it's not evil.
Yeah, and that's also a case where I would look at compile time for the query too, though.
Yeah,
so
sure.
If compilation is actually like wall clock duration expensive thing, then I probably wouldn't consider that. But like you're absolutely right in that people write queries in really dumb ways, right? Either lots of optional parameters or lots of local variables, and like when you throw that stuff at the optimizer, it's just kind of like, well, you're going to get my worst possible guess. So like adding a recompile hint just like takes the sting out of all that stuff, and then but there's absolutely no reason to like avoid it.
So yeah, like what I've been trying to say is, when we're talking about doing a fix and making it permanent, it's nice that you can figure out like what the goal is, and it's hard. I mean, we've been talking about it, and there's still so much more that we could say.
Yeah.
That, like if you ask any just how fast it should be, it's probably not the way you want to do it.
No, because they're going to say as fast as possible, right?
Yeah, as fast as possible.
Instantaneous.
Instantaneous. Yeah, so you're very often asking. And so hopefully you as a developer can find your end. You can look at what other code takes and what past precedent or, talk to a manager or whatever. But, hopefully you can get some idea. Or, like maybe it's just something where you spend an hour on it. If you can make it faster in an hour, you just stop there. Just picking some strategy there.
Well, I mean, particularly with recompile, it's like I was saying, like someone just like a bunch of optional parameters or local variables, right? And like recompile is this absolutely the path of least resistance for fixing that stuff. And you can explain that to someone and be like, look, I can add 20 characters to the end of this query, or I can spend a lot of time turning this into parameterized dynamic SQL. And then we'll and that would also sort of provide the same benefit, but that's going to take me a lot longer to write up and test and make sure everything is functioning right. Whereas this just does, not the equivalent to that, but performance wise, the gains are the same. So it's especially for something like SSRS reports, or you see the stored procedures that get thrown together by those or for those, and you're just no. I'm not rewriting that as dynamic SQL. I'm not rewriting that as anything else. I'm just sticking a recompile hint on here, and instead of taking 2 minutes, it takes 15 seconds, and that's good enough for this report. Query criticality is a big part of it too, right?
Mm-hmm.
People often look at the plan cache or query store, and they'll look at query costs and they'll be like, look at how expensive this query is. We have to get it to cost less. And I'm like, okay, well, what's the context of the query? Is it running when people care about it, or is it is it running in a time when it could either is it a user process, or is it running at a time when it could impact user processes? There's a lot of important contextual stuff. Every DBA and developer I've ever talked to has had a grudge against one particular section of code or portion of code, but it's not a portion of code that would have a real, fixing it would provide some real improvement for the end user. It's just something that they dislike. It's something that it's oh, well, the last person who worked here wrote this code and it sucks and I want to fix it. And I'm like, well, to what end? Who's going to benefit from you fixing this aside from you being happy that you threw out Joe's old code from 2000, what year is it? 2015, 16? Who's going to be happy with you? I don't know. I don't have a train of thought, so I'm not aware of these derailment problems.
Look for bad recording. You have to do some editing for the first 10 minutes.
No, I refuse to edit these. People are going to sit there with 30 seconds of you picking your chin hair.
Feeling me, man. I'm feeling this is it's like you on the call. The customer wants the instant answer. You're sitting there trying not to sweat. Oh man. All right. Parameter sniffing.
Yeah.
Parameter sniffing.
Yes.
Parameter sniffing.
Well, we should not. Okay, we should.
I got it.
Okay.
That helps.
Okay.
I just had to say parameter sniffing 3 times.
Okay.
So step 3, solve the problem permanently. It's one of those cases where having as big of a background knowledge about SQL Server as you can is very helpful. Mm-hmm. For example, if you might have a parameter sniffing issue, the query's slow, you figure it because it's because of parameter sniffing. I mean, there are a lot of ways to solve that, right?
Yeah.
You could literally add a semicolon in production, and it'll get a new cache plan, and maybe that cache plan is better, and you might think you solved the problem, right? Which is another way you can go off on a wrong path just by taking a query and rewriting it without really looking into why it's slow. Because I fixed my problem, but you didn't. It was a parameter sniffing problem, and it's going to come back. I don't know if I want to get into the details of how you fix that.
Aside from option recompile.
Yeah, it's not running off and like recompile. One thing that I like, which I think you don't, is I'll sometimes add an optimize for unknown hints if it's compiling a lot,
Yep.
and if it seems like the plan I get with unknown is just good enough. I mean, like I've done it.
So I can do you one better on that. You
Okay,
ready? You ready
I'm
to get
ready.
blown out of the water on this one? I
Manage my expectations.
recently fixed a parameter sniffing problem. Not with optimize for unknown. So it was a parameter.
Is it optimized for value?
Yeah. So it was a kitchen sink store procedure with lots of optional parameters in it, and I happened to stumble upon a set of optional parameters that produced like a fairly good all around plan, which was way better than the sway between like 100 milliseconds and like 30 seconds. Everything took like 800 milliseconds to like 1.5 seconds. So there was a much narrower swing. Like it wasn't as good as like the fastest plan, but it was
Mm-hmm.
way closer to the fastest plan consistently than the worst plans that you would get with like just like letting it run normally. So I did optimize for with a set of values for each parameter, and it was gangbusters. I've never felt so weird.
I'm proud of
I've
you.
never
Proud
felt
of you.
so
You
weird
need
and
to
dirty.
you need to go to the store and buy yourself some bigger shirts. You're gonna be filling them out pretty
That wasn't a
soon.
flex, man. I felt so guilty about that
Yeah,
because
no, I mean,
for years.
I
But again,
remember
that's not being
attending
dogmatic.
your. No, it's absolutely right. I mean, I remember attending your pre-con and you arrogantly dismissed the optimize for value syntax, and
Did I
you were
did I did I
very
dismiss optimize for values or optimize for unknown?
yeah. I think it was both, but I could be
Ah,
misremembering. If you like to set the record straight,
I
you,
don't
you
think
do
I've
that.
ever had a big problem with optimize for values, and I don't think I ever have because you know, like I don't know, probably from some Adam Mechanics session like 15 years ago where it was just like like top 2 billion optimized for top equals one, and I was like, cool, optimized for something is good. But like optimize for unknown was one of those things that like just years of consulting, I would see people use that all the time, and as soon as you quoted that out, it was like okay, like things were okay. And so like I optimize for unknown, I fully recognize that like once every like it's like a weird moon cycle. It's like once every 3 to 5 years, you'll find a situation where optimize for unknown is dope. But most of the
Three to
time, I'm just
five
like,
years. Man, I don't know if
as a
if we're talking
as a
about
consultant, it's like once
good
every 3 to 5
habits
years.
for query tuners. Hey, here's a trick you can use once every
Yeah,
three
yeah,
to five
yeah.
years.
Just mark today on your
Well,
calendar. And 3 years from now, you can try it. And 4 years from now, you can try it. And 5 years from now, you can try it. But no other time can you try it.
I have a much shorter cycle personally
Okay.
for achieving good results with optimizer unknown, but that could be due to the nature of my workload and
Very well could be.
the weird things I do. Um, I do think that parameter stuffing is, I think it's like the easiest problem to solve in the wrong way, right?
Yep.
Because as we said, you can literally do anything
Yeah.
and the problem might go
Hmm.
away, only to come
Hmm.
back. So if you can identify those cases, and I guess on that point, we're talking about the importance of actual plans. Uh, maybe the problem happened yesterday and you're not seeing it
Yep.
today. One thing I do is I go in the query store, get the optimize, or I get the parameter cache
Yep.
values. Then I add an optimize for value
Yep.
hints with those cache values, and get an actual plan. And that almost always
Yep.
works. Um, I don't know like how well known that is, but if you're looking to get an actual plan for a previous parameter setting
Yep.
problem, that's the method I use.
Uh, so I think in a sort of recent blog post I detailed what I do, which is fairly similar to what you do, where I'll create a temporary store procedure from with the query text and the parameter values that are stored in the XML, and then I can just rerun that temporary store procedure with different parameter values and see if, like what gets sniffed and like what order I have to execute stuff in. Like so, like I love that you get the compile time parameters from query store, but like I wish that there was some like way to log the like runtime parameters so that you could figure out exactly like which parameter sets like fight with each other, because it can get really complicated. Like you have like 5, 6, 7, 10 parameters to deal with, and you're like, okay, like, well, which ones do I have to change in order to get this to be bad? What do I have to change them to in order to get this to be bad? And you don't always have the answer quickly, because like you don't know which parameter it is, and worse, you don't know like what values got passed in. It could be something as stupid as like a date range being like usually a day and getting expanded to like 6 months, or it could be something like just like getting like a different user ID or something in there. Like that part of parameter sniffing I find difficult, because I don't always have access to everything that I need to like over time figure out like which columns are involved, which ones have skew in them, which ones might not have skew on their own but have skew when they're like put together. There's a lot of really tough stuff that can go on in that. But I think just from a general troubleshooting perspective, there are things you can look for in the query store that that make life easier. So like when you're looking at query store, look for queries that on average finish very quickly, but might have like a max CPU or duration that's really high. That's like one really good one really good sign of parameter sniffing, is that like usually this is real fast, but sometimes it's real slow, and sometimes that query will have multiple plans associated with it. And like getting those multiple plans might get you the right parameter values to test to figure out like what I have to do to make things slow or not. And it's like another thing that makes that can make that incredibly complicated is like if sometimes passing in a null value makes things slow, because then you're just like, well, like how would I have guessed null? Joe is scoring me on my answer right now. He's grading me.
We could
Oh,
spend a whole
maybe we
session
should.
complaining about query store. Maybe we should. Yeah, maybe maybe we can get it to the right. Yeah, like you have all those SQL Server connections, you can get it to the right
I can't
person.
even get anyone to make the GUI better.
Oh, I was talking about the GUI.
Oh,
Man, the
yeah. No,
GUI.
I've been complaining about that for years, and no one
No,
listens to me.
no,
It
that's
was only
true.
after many years and great effort was I able to get Azure Data Studio decoupled from SQL Server Management Studio.
Oh, that was your
Yeah, it
that
was
was your
Erin.
goal. Thank
Erin
you.
linked it in her blog post. She said this highly upvoted item.
Wait, wait. You created like a connect item and they fixed
Yeah,
it.
I created.
Wow,
Well,
that puts
I
you in a
mean,
rare
whatever
class
they
of
call it.
people.
It's not Connect, but
Yeah, I don't
yeah.
know what it's
But
called.
yeah, I created a user Connect voice idea learn doc, and it was highly upvoted. And it just so happened that a highly upvoted item also aligned with the future roadmap for SQL Server Management Studio, and so the decoupling was
No,
achieved.
it's one of those. It's one of those slight trips.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, oh well, coincidentally, we didn't care about that anyway.
Dear community, we love you so much that we went out of our way to fix this highly upvoted item
Yeah.
because we want to
Meanwhile,
solve your needs.
adding dark mode to Management Studio and putting the debugger back have like 5,000 upvotes. I had like 400 or something. Just like just happened to align.
But your upvote counts. You know, the Eric Darling name counts for a
Oh,
lot.
I don't know. It's funny because like I
It,
complained about it like 2 or 3 years ago, and I haven't said much about it since. And then like it's just like out of nowhere, it was like SSMS 20. It was like Azure Data Studio is gone now. Cool.
more examples. You got an index spool. Sometimes you can just add an index,
Yeah.
and that fixes
Oh,
it. So, sometimes not.
so one thing I
But
actually wanted to say earlier, you just jogged my memory on, like following a we talked about earlier, like following a process is great. Like having the knowledge to back that process is better. So like knowing why spools get chosen would be a really valuable thing when you're tuning query plans that have spools in them, obviously. But like knowing like why there's a spool there in the first place is huge, right? Like why is there like there's an eager index spool. Like what does that mean and why is it there? Or like there's a lazy table spool. What does that mean and why is it there? So like knowing that stuff is not stuff that comes easily or overnight. Like you might see one of those things, and you might even look at a query plan and be like, there's like 30 seconds in this eager index spool, or there's 30 seconds in this lazy table spool. But like, unless you know why that spool is there and how to correct that spool, like you might you're at a pretty big disadvantage when you're trying to follow just look at the query plan. It'll have all the problems, all the answers to your problems. It's like okay, but do you have the answers to why that query plan is what it is? Like that's another really challenging thing, I think, is imparting that knowledge is hard.
Yeah. Though I mean, to be fair with spools, it's often easy to make a spool go away if you create the index. Now, you might not be creating the best index, or you
Right.
might be in a situation where you have to be really careful with your indexing because of your weird workload or hardware or whatever. But I don't know, like for me personally, I would say that, figuring out I mean, I have the privilege of being able to add indexes whenever I want. So those aren't so bad for me. I'm sure there are some companies that do which have to justify their indexes to some, round table of
I work with
DBAs
people
who don't want to do anything.
Yeah, I work with people who where index changes have to get approved by a vendor and then go through company change management processes. And then they have to get added to the database and source control, and then they get rolled out. So I'll make suggestions to some people, and those changes won't end up anywhere near the product for months.
The real world is a scary place.
Sure is.
Full of dangers.
Yeah, I don't like it. But then you also consulting, you'll work with people who are look, if you don't give us some answers, we're going to be out of business in 3 to 6 months, so we can just do whatever. And you're like, cool. Put on the gloves.
Cardinality estimates.
Yeah.
Big cause of performance issues.
Legacy cardinality estimator for life.
If you can get to the place where you have the knowledge and experience, okay, this part is slow. It's slow because the cardinality estimate's bad, and I have a way to fix that cardinality estimate permanently, whether it's temp tables or recompile or a million other things, right? That can be a real game changer. And, you're solving the root cause, you're doing it quickly, and hopefully that select query never comes back to be worked on again.
Unless that cardinality estimate was great for a specific set of parameters and awful for
sounds like parameter setting issue. If you have parameter setting problems, you should rewind 15 minutes ago or whatever.
Yeah. Try to gain something from that jibber jabber.
Yeah. So I think that's enough about those. So I'm going to state the three things that I do twice more.
All right.
This is one of those times. First one, identify specifically why the query is slow at the operator level or wait stat level or similar level. Second step, as much as you can, try to figure out why SQL Server did the slow thing that you don't like. Third thing is try to implement a full and complete fix, which means you'll never have to work on that problem again. And it's much easier said than done. But when you can, I mean, I feel like that's the best way to do queries, not to overstate it.
Or understate it massively.
or understate it. I don't know. Man, it would be nice if we had some knowledgeable guest who would back me up, or who'd say I'm wrong. Either one's fine with me.
Well, I think I agree with the process.
I don't know how to get the people watching there.
Yeah, no, maybe we'll get we'll get some really helpful blog or YouTube comments about people agreeing or disagreeing. I don't know.
And maybe people will have training they recommend.
Yeah, maybe they will.
Maybe.
I'm sure someone out there has SQL Server training where they could learn these things.
Someone credible and reliable. I think there are a few odds and ends. You need to have monitoring set up. I recently just saw a question where someone's like, we don't have query store because DBAs say it'll add too much overhead. And I'll acknowledge based on the version of SQL Server and the workload, that is true for more than 0 people. There exists an environment where that's actually true. But I think in the vast majority of cases, that's just some grumpy dogmatic person who thinks 2008 R2 was the best version. And I don't want to slow down my workload. Or in fact, I'm gonna run SQL Server with a dash X parameter because that's how hardcore I am. And we don't need any of this fancy monitoring and whatnot. And my response to him, which I don't know if it helped, but it was, like your DBAs, like they have monitoring for things that they're responsible
Yep.
for. So for them to tell you you don't get monitoring for the thing you're responsible for, like if they want to say query store is too much overhead, well then they have to give you something
Yeah.
else. They have to give you
Yeah.
something. You need to have something.
Yeah.
If you have nothing,
Right.
then you're basically putting your fingers in your
Mhm.
ears because SQL Server wants to tell you why it's slow,
Yep.
but that information isn't getting
Yep.
you.
Yeah. And so like, I definitely agree with the three steps in your process. I would, when you know, for what I don't know, maybe it's me having sort of tunnel vision for what I do, but like like you might get handed a slow query, and it might not be obvious why the query is slow. So like you do have to have like a level or two above and a level or two below those three steps. They might not be like steps in like your core process, but they have to be like they have to be in the tool belt or whatever you want to call it. Where like you might need to look at the server as a whole to see if the entire server is just struggling and nothing is keeping up. You might have to look more closely like underneath and figure out if like you're hitting some weird SQL Server problem that is not necessarily the fault of the query, but like something deeper in there that's just like just not going well. So like there's definitely like this is an example like I was working with a client uh, and they would be like every once in a while the server slows down and like I spent so much time working on this problem and like they were right. Like they would like everything would run fine for a while. Something would happen. There would be massive blocking and deadlocking. Queries would grind to a halt. They'd restart the server. Everything would be fine. Like I identified a bunch of like query and index level stuff that I was just like, well, like I see what the blocking is. I see what the deadlocking is. Like there's definitely some like ways we could tune the queries and make this work. But like cool, like go ahead and fix that. And like everything worked fine for a while. Like actually everything worked great, like much better than usual for a while. But then the same thing happened. And like so I started like digging more and more and more. And what I found was every once in a while, with like almost no predictability or regularity, every once in a while, uh, they would get a stack dump on error logs. And when the server stack dumped on the error logs, that would precipitate all the other problems happening. And I don't know what that stack dump was, but it left SQL Server in such a confused and riled state that everything else would go wrong. So like, when you're like troubleshooting, like if your job is only like someone hands you a query, make it faster, those three steps will always serve you well. But if, you're dealing with, like a big complicated system, there's definitely like a level higher and a level lower that you need to be willing to like explore, like if the answer isn't obvious from like going through those three things.
I would say that's part of step one, but I guess that's kind of self-defeating in that what I'm really saying is to be a good query tuner, you have to sometimes do non-query tuning
Yeah.
things, which I guess is something that you can say. I don't know how practical that is for people to
Yeah.
follow, but you're definitely right in that, like part of step one is figuring out is the problem the
Right.
server, and you know, hopefully the company isn't in such a bad state where your developers have to figure out if the server has some kind of
Yeah.
problem. I mean, I've definitely been
Yeah.
there myself, and I'm sure many others have
Yeah.
been there. I mean, especially, I mean, you might not even have a DBA,
No,
so I
very
guess,
very few people do.
I
No,
mean,
I don't blame them.
I mean, that's the modern way of doing things. But yeah, you're right. Like, I mean, even just you could generalize that as just knowing when to ask for help if you need it
Yeah,
too.
especially from consultants who specialize in this
Speak,
space.
I mean, speaking of help, I think another good thing recruiting tuners to do is, like don't be a big fish in a small pond. Like if you really want to improve your skills or even just kind of benchmark yourself or even just invest in yourself, like helping other people for
Yep.
free on the internet is a pretty good way to
Yep.
do it. Because if you can, you know, take some horribly written question from someone you don't know, whose system you can't access, who's probably trying to trick you, and they're not giving you all the information you need. And if you can solve their problem, think about how easy by comparison your problems will
Yeah.
be. Where you're connected to the server, you can get the
Yeah.
actual
You can
plan,
do everything
you
you
can
want.
try things with query hints. It's just so much
Yeah.
easier. Um, like if you've got the stomach and willpower for it, it's definitely a way to level up your query tuning. And maybe you'll be at the department store and you'll be buying a bigger shirt, and Eric will be next to you also buying a bigger
Buying a
shirt.
much bigger
You
shirt
know,
than you.
of course. Um, I think that's about it. I think people should have good tools, like have the latest version of
Yep.
SSMS. Don't use a Yeah, I still connect to servers, and the version of SSS is like, 2008
Yeah.
R2, of
Yeah.
course, because
Yeah.
why wouldn't it be? No.
No. So I think like aside from the habitual stuff or the habit related stuff, I don't say habitual because that has weird context. But aside from like that, like the habit driven stuff that you mentioned, uh, I think it's like two that I hit on before. Like don't be overly dogmatic about what you think is bad. Stay analytical about like what problem you have in front of you, but also I think focus is really important for query tuners because it's really easy to get distracted by a lot of the stuff going on, sort of like not even necessarily like around the query, but just like you get handed like a big store procedure and it has like 50, 60 different queries in it. It's really easy to get bogged down in um like a bunch of queries that you like mentally like assign some wrongness to, that you're like, oh, I gotta fix this, I gotta fix this, I gotta fix this, I gotta fix this. And that's where this like stay focused on things. The thing that like one of what will help you stay focused on tuning the right part of the store procedure is getting the actual plan. So like make sure that you're focusing on the right thing in whatever you're working on to make it faster. So like you have get handed a store procedure, run the store procedure, get the actual plans, focus on the slowest parts of that plan. Then like like make sure that you're staying focused on the right parts of things. Like don't get like like put on your horse blinders and like don't get like worked up about like the 60 queries in the store procedure. Worry about the ones that are causing you the problems.
I'm gonna share one more
All right.
anecdote,
You want to call it
and
after
we
that, or
can
do you
we can
want
end
to?
it there. Yeah.
All right.
I'm not used to talking so much. I'm not
Yeah.
consultant, so.
I've been on phone calls since like 9 a.m. So this is the end of my talking. You can probably hear it. Like, it's like this is like my end of the pre-con day voice. Struggling.
You need to drink your tea,
I don't
man.
have tea.
You need to drink the
Yeah,
tea.
tea. Lagavulin tea. That's what I need to drink.
Um, I guess this isn't even query tuning, so maybe it's a bad anecdote,
No.
but it illustrates some of the principles. So I had a T-SQL performance
Yeah.
problem. I don't know what it's called, like the SP session context set
Oh yeah
procedure,
yeah
the newer
yeah
one, that was taking like three
yeah
seconds to run. And the application design always called that before executing a
yeah
query. It was saying some metadata that was
yeah
sometimes used. So sometimes you'd have issues where, like, even if the query, like the real work took a millisecond, you had the 3 seconds of session setting a
right
variable to memory, which is like totally
yeah
outrageous,
absolutely
right? So it's all right, this is something I had to figure out. And since I have logging of, which queries were slow, I was able to see the issue only happened sporadically. And in fact, it seemed to happen like almost exactly every 2 hours, where you'd see this spike of SP session set whatever
yeah
is suddenly taking way longer than
yeah
it should. And I was like, oh, is this some locking thing? Is this some weird internal SQL Server
like SQL Server
process
having to
thing?
clean up
Like,
contexts and stuff.
yeah,
Like
yeah, right. Is there some kind of like intention?
garbage
Like I'm
collection.
googling for, yeah, yeah, like I'm googling for this. I like can't find anything.
Yeah
What's going on? And um, I figured out it was related to memory allocation, which makes sense, I guess,
sure
because I mean, like it's not doing a lot. Like you're just
yeah
setting some stupid
imaginary bit
value
in the
to
thing.
some
Yeah.
memory. Yeah, like I mean, why should that take long? And I eventually figured out that there was some IT scanning process where every 2 hours it would do some like it was trying to record, I guess, performance
Okay.
diagnostics of the server, but I guess it was like the extremely heavy handed and it would just like I don't know what it was doing. Like I'm not good enough at OS stuff to tell
Yeah.
you, but it was doing something that was very expensive to the
Hmm.
server, and it was actually making everything slow
Yeah.
down. But the SP session set thing was so obvious and such an
Right.
obvious red flag that that's the thing I noticed. So the problem had nothing to do with SQL Server, nothing to do with how we were calling that, but it was some weird
Yeah.
IT thing was just thrashing the server for two
Sound like
hours.
Sean Gallardi blaming the filter drivers for everything.
Why does SQL Server do IO storing? Yeah, I want you to get Sean on this program, and that's going to be the first question I ask him.
I'll see what he says. I'll shoot. I will
Okay.
text him
Well,
and Joe Sack and see
you,
if they're willing
uh,
participants.
you, you probably shouldn't tell him I'm going to ask him that.
Uh,
To improve our
I think
chances.
that would be the one thing that would draw him in, is that so that
Oh,
he
all
could
right.
yell at you
Well,
about that.
I'll leave it up to you.
Joe Sack will probably say that Microsoft prohibits him from.
I mean, he's still an important guy, right? He's high up there.
Um, I'm not sure actually what his new title is, and I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say what he's working on.
Oh, well,
Uh,
then don't.
yeah, I'm not gonna. But I mean, if I knew his title, I would say his title. I don't think that's a big deal. He's Papa Sack, so I mean, but anyway, yeah, I mean, he's working on cool stuff, and I don't know if he would be able to speak freely about the cool stuff he's working on, but um, it would be nice to have a general SQL Server chat, fireside chat. We can all wear sweaters for that one. I'll put like a fake fire background on the green screen.
Good,
Just,
good. Yeah, all right. So for our loyal viewers, maybe next time or time after that, we'll have a guest and we can grill them.
yeah,
You know,
maybe.
maybe, maybe not. Probably not, but
See if
maybe.
we can get Paul on here wearing a mask. Fake voice thing.
Or we can get a victim of SQL Saturday with with the voice and the
Oh
face
yeah. That'd be
obscured
a good
and
story.
and
The sequel
he,
sequel
he can he
Saturday's
can
dark
share his
underbelly.
he can share his herring experiences.
We'll see. We'll see. I
Okay.
will. I will. I will. I will set. What did they say? I will send out feelers.
Do people say that?
Yeah.
No one I know
Yeah.
says that.
Feelers.
Kind
Feelers.
of feelers.
Send out feelers. All right.
Okay.
Thank you for listening to the Bit Obscene radio show. There was also for a few seconds at the beginning a television show. I'm Eric Darling. That's Joe Obbish over to the side there. He's going to hit the links now. And I don't know. Thank you for watching. It's been an hour and 40 minutes. Goodbye.
Bye.